All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for taking part of your lunch break to come learn about Tableau Bridge. Hopefully you're in the right session. This is Tableau Bridge, bringing your data to Tableau Online. My name's Miranda Osterheld. I'm joined by Sanjeev here.
Hi.
We're going to kick us off by me telling you a little bit about my bucket list. So the first item on my bucket list is actually something I've already done. I have flown and landed a plane before. So in case of emergency, we have that skill set with us together in the room today. Both my parents are pilots, and so in high school, they really encouraged me to go and get my pilot's license. Turns out I didn't love flying, so that never stuck, much to their dismay. But I do have that skill set available if we need it. The second piece of my bucket list is that someday I plan on owning a goat. I really, really want to own a goat. I know a lot of people think goats are creepy. They have like the square pupils, sometimes associated with like satanic rituals or whatever. The point is a lot of people think goats are creepy. I love goats. I think they're adorable, especially when they scream. And so one day I hope to own at least one goat and several chickens, have kind of like a front yard suburban farm happening. And then my last bucket list item is that I plan on going to all of the national parks in the US before I die. I've only done 6, and there are a lot of national parks, and several of them are melting. So I'm prioritizing those first. I hope to do Glacier in the next year, and then probably a lot of the ones in Alaska after that, because those are the ones at risk. But for my day job, currently I'm now a product manager for authentication on the server and cloud platform team. Before that, for 2.5 years, I was a product consultant, which meant I essentially helped my customers evaluate, deploy, scale, and secure both Tableau Server, Tableau Online, and then, of course, do analytics in desktop and prep. So that's why I'm here for you guys today. I have a lot of experience with my customers, helping them deploy Tableau Online, and then a big part of that is managing and scaling Tableau Bridge. So with that, I'll let Sanjeev introduce himself.
Hi, everybody. Thanks again for coming out. I'm Sanjeev, and I work at Tableau for the second time. I left for a couple years and then realized I missed it and came back, hence the term boomerang. I think especially at TC, where a group of people who really know and understand the culture and kind of the Tableau is a special place. So I realized I wanted to come back and work there more. In non-work related stuff, I'm an amateur charcutier. I have 25 pounds of bacon curing in my basement fridge right now, along with half a leg of prosciutto. That takes a long time to eat a leg of prosciutto because that's a lot of prosciutto. But it's a fun hobby, keeps me fed. And also, I like riding bikes down mountains. I don't like riding up the mountains as much, but you kind of have to. And I usually don't break many bones, only 6 so far. And at Tableau, I'm the product manager for Bridge and our data services. So I'm working on the software layers that bring data into the rest of Tableau, whether that is from on-prem or from cloud sources.
Great. So a little bit of expectation setting today, what we're going to cover. I'm going to talk you through what Bridge is, and then we'll talk about using Bridge, different models for managing it, and then scaling out your Bridge deployments. And then Sanjeev will wrap us up with the future of Bridge. He'll give us a peek into some features coming, and then hopefully we'll have plenty of time for Q&A. I was just discussing with this gentleman here, this is actually not a Tableau Online session in that we're not going to cover Tableau Online specific features. We're going to talk about Bridge. So just in case, how many people don't know what Tableau Online is?
I'm not sure if I don't know, but I don't use it.
Okay. How many people here don't use Tableau Online today? Okay, great. Well, just in case, Tableau Online, right, is the SaaS kind of Tableau hosted version of Server, a little bit more narrowly scoped in that you're getting a Tableau Online site. But the idea is we host it and manage it for you. It's really, really awesome and amazing, but it's the collaboration piece of the platform. Right? Desktop is where you build content and essentially do analytics locally. And then when you're ready to scale that out and maybe share that content with people who don't necessarily have desktop, you can do that with Tableau Online and then permission and manage users and all that. Make sense? Cool. So How many people know what Bridge is or are using Bridge today? Great, so about half the room, quick estimate. Just in case that you don't know what Bridge is a free supported client that you guys install locally on machines behind your firewall to use in conjunction with Tableau Online to keep access and freshness to on-premise data, right? We need that connectivity to data behind your firewall. Obviously, you don't want to let the internet in, and so Bridge helps us keep live connections to SQL-based data sources behind your firewall, and then also refresh extracts on a schedule that we then publish up to Tableau Online. Cool? Just a little bit of how we got to where we are today. Originally in Tableau 9.0, we had a sync client that came with Tableau Desktop. And so that sync client was entirely for the purpose of keeping extract refreshes fresh. So it would take an extract and then on a schedule allow you to refresh that extract locally and publish it online to online automatically. In Tableau 10.3, we actually renamed it to Tableau Bridge because now we're not just keeping extracts fresh, we allowed you to maintain connections, live connections to on-premise data sources. So that's when Tableau Bridge officially came to be, but it still shipped with Tableau Desktop. You needed a Tableau Desktop installed in order to get access to Tableau Bridge. So in Tableau 2018.2, we essentially expanded that out and allowed you to download Tableau Bridge as a standalone client. So you can download as many Tableau Bridge clients as you want without desktops and essentially manage those all independently of your desktop deployment. So I've been throwing a lot of Tableau jargon at you, and this is Tableau Conference, so I'm supposed to do that. But just in case you're not familiar with what extracts and live queries are or the difference between them, extracts are essentially snapshots of that data source at the point in time when you took that extract, right? And so that can be the entire definition of the data set with joins and unions and cross data source connections, whatever it may be, but it essentially materializes that data into an in-memory .hyper file format, which is that as up-to-date as the last time you took that extract, right? So it requires a refresh because it's pulling that data on a schedule, and now we're pointing our dashboards to that new file type. Hyper is really cool, really performant, columnar, store, but really awesome database technology, but it's only as up-to-date as the last time we took the extract, right? Live connections, on the other hand, leave the data where it lives. And so essentially every time we load up a dashboard that's using a live connection or we're building against a live connection in desktop, we are passing that query back to the underlying data source, so maybe a SQL server or even an Excel file, and then we're receiving the result set and materializing that. So we're always as up to date as your underlying data source is, barring any sort of local caching, because we're not pulling any sort of copy of the data anywhere, right? We're just visualizing the result set of that query. Make sense? Cool. So don't feel like you have to read this list. They advise me against this because everyone always tries to read a very small list on a PowerPoint slide. But the point is to overwhelm you with how many options there are for connectivity to on-premise data sources. And all of this information is available in our online help. So don't feel like you have to take pictures, but you certainly can. The idea is like if it's an on-premise data source, we probably support it. And there's different ways you can enable that connectivity. And a lot of times that's through Bridge. Now, I'm going to pause because some of the more advanced IT folks in the room might have scruples in terms of what I consider on-premise versus internet accessible. For the purpose of this conversation, we are going to assume that if your data is cloud hosted, the appropriate way to enable connectivity between Tableau Online and that data source, maybe it's Redshift, Google BigQuery, whatever it is IP whitelisting. We are allowing Tableau Online to connect to that data source directly through the cloud. We don't need Bridge. We don't need to route it through an on-premise Bridge VM. The idea is they're talking directly, and that's both for extracts and live connections. For on-premise data, so data behind your corporate firewall, right, that's when we use Bridge for both extract refresh or live connections. Now, I know a lot of you may say, if you're a little more cloud familiar, that, okay, just because my data is in the cloud doesn't mean it's not behind a firewall. It could be in a private subnet, in a VPC, whatever. The point is like, for the purpose of this discussion, bear with me on this. If you have more nuanced edge cases on how you want to enable stuff in a private subnet in a VPC, we can talk about that specifically after, and we have a whole white paper on your different options. But for now, bear with me on this, okay? Cool. So I'm going to pass it off to Sanjeev to talk a little bit about the technical specifications of how Tableau Bridge works for both live connections and extracts, and then we'll move on to managing Bridge.
Thank you. So there are a few guiding principles that we used when designing Bridge. And it was very important that we maintain the security of your data, because we're bringing data from your corporate network into the cloud, and that we preserve the integrity of your network itself. So what you'll notice here is that connections are only outbound from your network. Tableau Online doesn't come into your network and go pick and choose the data it wants. You have to set up an outbound relationship and tell it what you want to make available to it. So you're always in control of what data is going up to Tableau Online. Also, all the traffic is encrypted in both directions. Your data is not playing out in the internet. And we use industry standard encryption that you can read more about the details on our website if you want to know how that works. So for live connections, we maintain a persistent WebSocket connection. And if you're familiar with this, or if you're not, you can liken it to any other server app that needs to maintain a connection, like a chat program or something, where we have this bidirectionally secure connection between online and your data. When online has a query, it'll send that query to Bridge, and Bridge will send the data back up. Now, these agents that are handling these live queries had to be set up in advance. So again, this isn't something that online can just reach in and get data that you haven't already set up the availability of. Extracts work in a different way. With extracts, you set up a schedule when you want that extract to be refreshed, say every day at 5 a.m. or every hour, and Bridge will get that schedule from Tableau Online, and then with its own clock, it'll fire off whenever it's time to refresh that schedule. It'll make a query to your data source, create a hyper extract, and then upload that to Tableau Online. So there's not a persistent connection here. We're just making the files locally and then uploading them. This is another slide that you don't have to read or pay attention to because all of this is on our website. But the reason I wanted to put this up here is to show you there is a lot more depth to this that I'm not going to go into because not everybody here is super interested in the details of how we make everything secure. But you can go to our website and read plenty more about all the details of the security to make sure that this is meeting all your needs for security and governance. Next, I want to talk about some of the different accounts that you'll use when you're configuring Bridge. Bridge connects to a lot of different things, so you need different accounts to do that. The first one is a Tableau Online account. The whole point of Bridge is to push data to your Tableau Online site. So when you set it up, you're going to need to provide credentials to push that data to online. So you'll be logging into online to provide that Bridge agent with access. And Bridge does support SAML and OpenID to authenticate into Tableau Online. Now, a user can only assign extract refreshes to the Bridge clients that are running under their own credentials. So somebody can't go and assign an extract to run on your Bridge client unless you set that up for them. And we'll get into more detail when we talk about actually using Bridge, how you set that up and how that works. The next important account is the Windows account. Bridge is an app that runs on a Windows machine, and so you'll need to be logged into that machine to install it, configure it, keep it up to date, things like that. And you can see people do this with their personal accounts, like you can install it on your own laptop, or you may want to have a service account or something more IT-friendly for your Bridge machines so that anyone who has the access can log in and configure those. It's not just dependent on one person. But this is a fairly standard practice with lots of Windows-based services, and you can use that here as well. Then finally, the other credentials that you can see in this part are the credentials for your databases themselves. When you set up an extract in Bridge, you need to provide the credentials to the database that it'll be querying to generate that extract. Obviously, if it's running on a schedule at 5 a.m., you don't want it popping up asking for credentials at that time. So you need to store those credentials in the local Bridge agent so it can make those queries on your behalf. Next, let's talk about the different modes that Bridge can run in. I mentioned that Bridge is an application, and by default, it installs as a Windows app, and that means you must be logged in for it to run. If you end your Windows session, Bridge stops running and will no longer respond to queries or extract refreshes. Sometimes this is what you want. You may want, if this is your personal machine, to not have anything happen on the machine while you're not logged in. But if you want a more fault-tolerant deployment, say if you install updates overnight and the machine reboots and you want Bridge to come back up, you can configure Bridge to run as a Windows service. This requires local admin privileges because configuring services in Windows always requires you to be an admin. But what it lets you do is run Bridge even when there's no user logged onto the machine. So this can be very helpful in cases where you always want that Bridge to be running and always be able to handle queries even if the machine reboots for some reason or if you want it to be a machine where there's not always a user logged in. An important thing to note about that is you still have the ability to remove that Bridge agent from online itself. So let's say this is my laptop and I set up Bridge to always connect back to online after restart, and I leave the conference and I forget my laptop. I could go in remotely and disable that Bridge agent, so now this lost laptop no longer has that connection up to online if anybody does find it. So I'll hand back off to you to talk about how to use Bridge.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
The first piece, right, is we have to install Bridge on a machine, and as you guys have probably picked up by now, since we keep saying Windows over and over again, it is Windows only at this point. But Bridge is a pretty lightweight service or application, depending on the mode you're running in. And the idea is this client only requires a very baby machine. If you're going to install it on a VM, 2 cores, 4 gig of RAM, it'll run just fine. And a lot of my customers, especially when they're getting started with Tableau Online and maybe don't have the most robust deployment at this point, run Bridge clients on their laptops, right? The idea is that we need it on a machine that can access the resources that it needs to keep fresh, either from a live connection or extract standpoint. So feel free, if you're just getting started and you're kind of the data steward and you're going to be responsible for keeping that data fresh, you can install Bridge on your laptop. That being said, as these deployments grow, I see a lot of people moving Bridge clients to kind of centrally managed virtual machines where a site admin and an IT can kind of control all of these Bridge clients. So I'm going to go through some screenshots of installing Bridge, and really you don't need to remember the order of operations here. Again, this is all documented online. I just want to point out important concepts throughout, so don't feel like you need to memorize the steps I'm doing it in. We didn't feel like I should demo this piece because then we would be reliant on the Wi-Fi, which we all know isn't necessarily the best. Thanks, Mandalay. But the point is that these are screenshots of the process, so hopefully you can understand the general flow of one, getting Bridge installed, and then setting up your data sources. So first piece is you need to install the Bridge client on whatever machine you're installing it on. You can go to Google Tableau Bridge releases, and you'll be brought directly to this page. We have the most recent version and then previous versions. Unless you have a good reason not to, feel free to install the most recent version, right? Newer is generally better. And then you get this dialog, and it's saying, hey, you're going to install Tableau Bridge. Once you do that, if you pop open your Windows tray, and I tried to highlight it there, you'll get the nice little Bridge icon, which is the Tableau T, and then another Tableau T in the exponent point. But it has a little red notification error right now because I need to set it up. So if I click on that, I will be brought to this dialog, and you can see I've already highlighted that it's running in application mode, like Sanjeev said, by default. Because service mode makes the most sense for my deployment, if I want to change that, I'll be brought to this notification where it will say, switching to service mode runs live query. It's got to refresh activities as long as the computer is on, not necessarily when you're logged in. So I say, okay, I have to be a local admin. These are my Windows credentials that I put in, right? I'm giving Tableau Bridge permission as a Windows user to access these resources and run in service mode. So this is the Windows account part. Then the next piece is you can see it's already connected to the site Madeline Lee in this screenshot, and that's because I was logged into my Tableau Online site in desktop, and it actually, since this is the same machine, it could pick up on that and automatically do that. If I wasn't, it would say log into your Tableau Online site. So if I click it right now, these are where I put in my Tableau Online credentials. Right? And that Tableau Online credential piece is where I'm essentially assigning this bridge client to my Tableau Online credentials. That's how it's maintaining the connection to Tableau Online. But this is important because, like Sanjeev said, I can only assign extract work to Tableau Bridge clients I own. And that will impact, right, how we end up managing our bridge deployment, because essentially I can only assign extracts to bridge clients I'm authenticated into, right, from an online perspective. So that influences how we end up running our bridge deployment. And then the next piece, and this is something that you can only do if you're a site admin, is if I want to maintain live connections, I need to enable it on my site. So if I click that fix button or just go directly into my Tableau Online site as a site admin and go to the settings page, I can go to the bridge tab, and this is the important part. It's the tiny little checkbox. Oh my gosh, look at my hand. And it says enable Tableau Bridge client to maintain live connections to on-premise data. That is the checkbox we need. And that is what would allow us to keep some bridge clients as extract and live and essentially be able to live query on-premise data. Cool? Well, now you might say, great, you have your bridge client set up, but what I want it to do is maintain freshness for those data sources. So how do I do that? We're going to go through the traditional process of publishing data from Tableau Desktop to Tableau Online. And you can do this in multiple ways. I'm sure you guys, if you're desktop users, you're familiar. You can do this through publishing a workbook, where you publish a workbook and you can publish the data source in one fell swoop. A lot of my users do this. If you click the Data Sources tab, and I know it's probably blurry for some of you guys in the back, so I blew it up here. I can either publish this separately, which would prevent me from using Bridge. Bridge only works against published data sources. So a lot of you probably know data sources can stay embedded in a workbook, or they can be published separately where you can maintain that as an asset that you permission and control within Tableau Online. All of that metadata is already defined. It's like the curated, standardized data source that we're going to permission people to use. That's what Bridge works against. So I always want to publish that separately, and then from an authentication standpoint, that's pretty data source dependent. But at the end of the day, we need to embed those credentials for Bridge to be able to work. And so it will pick up on the fact that we can't connect directly to this data source. We're going to use Bridge client to keep this data fresh, and then you can say, well, I want to create an extract at this point, or publish it as a live data source. The other thing I wanted to point out here is you can just publish data sources separately, right? We don't have to publish a workbook to publish a data source. And so in that case, similar dialogue, but you want to ensure that for the authentication piece, you go and click Edit, and again, embed whatever credentials you need. Cool. So for live connections, you're done. After that, there's nothing you need to do from a Bridge standpoint. And this is because for live connections, queries are pooled across all Bridge agents that are set up for live and extract, right? When you set up a Bridge client, you saw that in the screenshot before, you have the option for doing live and extract or just extract. For any Bridge client on your site that is set up for live and extract, it is now part of the live query pool, and it can receive that query and service that query at any time. So that's important because all of those Bridge clients that are set up for live connections, right, obviously need to be able to access that resource so that it can service the query. But we don't need to embed any credentials. For live connections, we actually receive those credentials encrypted at runtime, and we get it from Tableau Online, and then it's passed through the Bridge client. So that's all there is to it. You will be able to pop into any Bridge client that's set up for live connections, and the data source should appear there right away after you're done publishing. For extracts, it's a little bit more complicated because like Bridge hinted at, like Sanjeev hinted at, we need to make sure that Bridge has those credentials locally because it's just running on a schedule to create that extract. So it needs those credentials locally. It puts them in the Windows Credentials Manager to go and access those resources on that schedule. So after I publish that extract, within Online, I get this dialog. It says, hey, your extract has been published to the server. I still can't connect directly to this data source. Do you want to schedule using Tableau Bridge right now? And so if I click that button, I can schedule a refresh on any Bridge client that I own. So this drop-down would have all bridge clients that I am authenticated into from a Tableau Online standpoint, right? My Tableau Online credentials. And then I can set up the schedule there and then set schedule and it's good to go. That being said, if I click out of that dialog and I don't schedule the refresh right away from Tableau Online, I can always go into the data source within Tableau Online, go to the Extract Refreshes tab, and then people always miss this button. It's my one UI complaint. It's over here on the right-hand side. It says refresh this extract on, and it says Tableau Online. But Tableau Online can't access that resource. I need to click that button and assign it to a Tableau Bridge client that I own. And so that's the Tableau Online piece, right? I've assigned an extract, I've published a Tableau Online to a particular bridge client. But now I need to go into that bridge client and make sure that bridge client has the credentials for that connection, right? So you can see it's saying, ooh, theater's extract, you don't have your credentials embedded for that. And you'd click this little pencil icon, and then you'd put in your credentials, your username and password you want Bridge to use to access that resource, okay? Not too bad. The other thing I wanted to point out, and this is going along with the pooling thing, this is actually a screenshot we'll come back to later for our own Tableau dev environment, which we run in Tableau Online. So you guys know, rest assured, this all works. But the idea is, right, you can see before some of these bridge clients are set up for extract and live. Those are all part of the pool. We also get information on ones that are only set up for extract, and then which ones are like disconnected or connected, right? We get kind of this high-level view of all of our bridge clients as a site admin that is connected to our Tableau Online site. And this is exactly where before Sanjeev said, you know, if your laptop gets stolen, you can delete a bridge client and essentially revoke that access right away. All right. So Sanjeev, do you want to talk them through the different models for managing Bridge?
Yeah. So Bridge initially started out as sort of a one-off thing that you would install to publish your data sources. But it's grown well beyond that and now has become part of a lot of enterprises' data ecosystem. So we've seen two different models emerge at sort of different ends of the spectrum from personally managed to IT managed. So these you can think of as kind of the design patterns for scaling Bridge within your organization. And most people don't do all one or all the other. They'll have some sort of combination of the two models, but they do both work a little bit differently. So the first one is what we call the private publisher model, and this is sort of the classic Bridge use case, where if you own data and you are responsible for sharing that data, you'll set up a bridge, you'll manage that bridge, keep it up to date, keep the credentials updated, all those things. From end to end, you own access to that data through Bridge. Now, this can be really good when there's a lot of distributed ownership because different people will have different ways they want to share data, and this allows them to retain control of that. But the downside is everybody is responsible for all parts of that. They need to be responsible for keeping the Bridge agent updated, keeping it running. They have to deal with any issues that may come up if the machine goes down or if they need to bring in some other data sources they don't have credentials to. It pushes a lot of the technical work onto the data owner, and they may not be the right person to do that. In a more IT-focused model, we have central management of Tableau Bridge. So in a case like this, the work of maintaining these machines and maintaining the service is done by generally IT people who are more familiar with the technical requirements for that. And the individuals who own data sources are just responsible for publishing the data. So this is sort of the flip side. It's more centralized control and ownership of the agents themselves and a little bit less flexibility for the individual data owners. But it also means that a lot of the responsibilities are put closer to the right people. You don't have people who aren't generally responsible for running services in charge of running Tableau Bridge unless they want to be. So let's talk through how each of these would play out. In the private publisher model, we have a data owner, the guy with the goatee and the tie, and he wants to share some data with other people in his organization. So in step one, he installs Bridge, optionally configures it as a service, and then his site admin in orange can optionally set it up for live connections. But he doesn't have to involve the site admin at all if he doesn't want to. So then he'll publish his data source, he'll set it up in online to make it refreshed on his schedule. He'll put in the credentials, and he's done. So in this case, he owned every step of that process, and he was responsible for maintaining all of that. Now, in the centrally managed model, this is going to look different. Here we have the IT pro starting out installing Bridge on several machines, potentially. Again, you can optionally configure those to run as a service and to handle live connections. But the idea here is that she's doing this in bulk. There's several agents because she wants to maintain a pool that people across her company can use. So now, when it's time for our friend with the goatee to publish data, he still will go through the normal walkthrough that Miranda showed of publishing the data up, but he's going to need to coordinate with that IT person who owns the agent to put in those credentials. Because, as we mentioned, you can't set an extract to run on an agent you don't own, so the person who owns these agents will have to handle that step for him. Then everything else proceeds as normal across all these different Bridge agents. You assign it to whichever one is appropriate, or for a live connection, it would go to all of them. So how do you scale Bridge up as you're making these larger deployments in your organization? You want to tell us?
Sure. So just from a addition of Bridge clients perspective, it is very simple, right? Every Bridge client you can add through the same steps that we showed you before on new machines. You just download, connect them, and go. It's that simple. The only kind of consideration is if you were moving an extract from a previously assigned Bridge client to the new Bridge client, right, then you need to think about, okay, we need to transfer over those credentials, and then from a connectivity and permission standpoint in Tableau Online, ensure like the new owner of that data source can connect and all of that. So adding Bridge clients and then assigning work to those Bridge clients from a scaling out perspective is very simple. The only kind of hiccup is like if we need to move previously scheduled extracts to new ones, you got to be a little bit more careful to ensure the new Bridge clients has those credentials. But how many Bridge clients does an online site need, right? And that's really dependent because it's essentially how many extracts do you need to run potentially in a 24-hour period? Do they need to all run at the same time? How many live connections do you have? And so let's talk about some of those considerations. A Bridge client can run extracts in serial. If you assign work to a Bridge client, work being an extract, for the two different extracts for the exact same time, it will only do one of those at once, and then it will, once it completes, start the next extract, right? It runs them in serial. So that means if you had the business use case where I need both of these extracts that take an hour, they both take an hour to run at the exact same time or be finished by the exact same time, you need two Bridge clients, right, to do those both at the exact same time. So from an extract completion standpoint, it requires a little bit more mental gymnastics because you need to take into consideration your business requirements for when that data needs to be fresh by. I have plenty of customers who are able to use a single Bridge client and keep a lot of data up to date because they have all of their extracts run between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. and they're okay with them being completed in serial on that single Bridge client, as opposed to all being complete at the exact same time. Does that make sense? The other piece is if you set up Bridge clients for live connections or live and extract, those queries actually can be multi-threaded. So a single Bridge client can receive multiple live connections at the same time. That's fine. But what I will say is you probably want to reserve, from a busyness standpoint, some Bridge extracts or some Bridge clients for extract-only work, and then be aware that for the ones set up for live and extract connections, that those will be receiving potentially live requests, right? So if you took a live and extract Bridge client, so it's receiving live query requests, and then you have extracts running during business hours when it's receiving those queries, right? That could cause a little bit more slowness in the extract completion time. So just be aware when you're setting up certain Bridge clients to be able to support live connections as part of those pools, maybe you're not assigning all of the extract work during business hours to those particular clients.
And I'll add one thing. If you are using live connections in Bridge on your site, you should probably have at least two agents, because if one goes down for whatever reason, the machine reboots or crashes or something, you would want the other one to be able to pick up the slack and still handle live connections. Otherwise, all your live connections would stop working.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. There is automatic failover for live connections in a bridge pool, right? Because if we have multiple bridge clients set up, then the next bridge client can receive those live queries if the first one, if that machine went down for whatever reason. For extracts, there isn't that redundancy built in. So we're assigning extract work to a particular bridge client. If we need a backup extract to run in case that VM goes down and we didn't know, you essentially need a copy of that extract running at the same time, right, on a separate bridge client. That failover for extracts doesn't exist because we're assigning work to a particular client to run on a schedule. But rest assured, Tableau uses Bridge very efficiently right now for our entire Tableau dev team. And you can see we kind of have a mix of the models here. We have some independently owned Bridge clients for independent developers, those data stewards who maybe are iterating on data sources, building stuff out, practicing, maybe curating data sources. And so for those scenarios, they probably shouldn't have to go through the policy management of going through a site admin to be able to publish and keep that data fresh. But once that data is approved, and then maybe it makes sense for it to be more centrally managed because it's something that all of the dashboards for production are running off of, then we can pass those off to the centrally managed Bridge client where we have a couple of those running and those site admins are maintaining them on those virtual machines. So you can mix and match, and it might make sense depending on your policies at your company, to have that mix and match. But we essentially service a lot of data requests through, you can see 111 total clients. I think it's actually up to 8 live clients right now. And I'll have to reference the stats here. 160 unique published data sources for over 1,500 users. And we see 1,700 to 2,500 Bridge extract refreshes per day. I tried to memorize that, and it just didn't go well. So those are our stats for this particular site on our Tableau Online. And that's all it took, right, from a management standpoint. You can see some of these are even disconnected, not being used, to be able to essentially scale out our data freshness needs and service those needs. So it is meant to be iterative, right? You can add Bridge clients as you go. If you decide you need more for live connections or for extract refresh needs, it's very easy to add Bridge clients, but it is particular to your deployment in terms of how you want to scale that out. But now let's talk about the fun stuff, the future of Bridge.
So what's next? Everything we've talked to up until this point is how Bridge works today. You can go download it and do everything that we just said. But if you've been using Bridge, or if you have maybe picked up on a few of the things that we talked about that may be issues, you'll notice some of the things that we're trying to improve in Bridge. A big one is better machine utilization. On one hand, it's kind of good that you don't need a super powerful machine to run Bridge. You can just run it on your laptop. But a lot of people nowadays have access to 24 or 32 core machines that Bridge won't really take full advantage of. So we want Bridge to be able to scale up to use all of these powerful machines and VMs if you want it to. Miranda also mentioned that if you have an extract assigned to a specific machine and that machine goes out of service, no other machine can pick it up because you've explicitly said, I want this machine to handle it. It'd be great if we could also allow pooling for extracts the same way we do with live connections. So if that machine isn't available, we just use some other machine to publish your extract refresh. Also, we want to be able to store all credentials online. Not everyone wants to do this, so it would be an option. But if you would rather have all your credentials managed and online instead of having to put them on the Bridge agent, we want to allow that. And you still could put the credentials on the Bridge agent if you want it to stay within your network. Either of those should be possible. And another one is support for virtual private clouds. So this is the case where you have a cloud data source, Redshift, Snowflake, whatever, that's tunneled into your corporate network. So it's not internet accessible. Right now, if you try to set that up with Bridge, it'll say, oh, this is Redshift. You don't need Bridge to use this. But it's not internet accessible unless you make IP whitelist and a hole in your firewall, which may not be an option for you. So we want you to be able to use Bridge for that as well. So we've got some work that is in progress right now to address a lot of these concerns and pain points. And I want to stress that this is work that is literally being done right now. So some terminology may change. These are working titles and just kind of dev-focused names for things. But right now, you can get data into Tableau Online Live. That's very easy. And with Bridge, it's just an extension of that. You have a live connection to something that happens to be on your corporate network. And with a client extract, which is the way Bridge extracts work today, there's a schedule on the Bridge agent itself. The Bridge agent generates a hyperfile and uploads it to online. So what we're working on now is moving some of that functionality up to the server side. So the schedule and extract creation happens up in Tableau Online. And the query and response looks exactly like a live connection to the Bridge agent. So by doing this, we get a lot of those benefits of live queries in extracts as well. We get the concurrency, we get the ability to use more of the machine, we get the pooling, but we're still doing extract management and extract refreshes instead of having a live connection to that data. So you get all the benefits of an extract as well. Now, this isn't strictly better than what we have now. There are some cases where you may need to use an extract that's built down on the agent, and you don't want to have it be a live query that could go to any machine. For example, if you have a literal Excel file on one machine, it doesn't make sense to have a pool of machines handle that since they don't have copies of that same file. There are also cases where you may want a certain request to go to a certain machine for performance reasons, like if you have a bunch of databases in Japan and a bunch in Germany, you might want to have a Bridge agent on those same networks with those databases to handle those connections for the most performant network speed. So now you know everything there is to know about Bridge. You know how to install it, configure it, how to publish data sources, and how to use live queries and extracts. You also know how to manage Bridge from the more site admin point of view, how to scale it up in your organization. And you know what we're working on that you can expect to see in the near future and take advantage of. So with that, we'd like to thank all of you for attending.